My name is Miller Puckette. I have worked for many years as a professor in a music department, but by origin I'm a mathematician. I studied mathematics as a kid and intended really to be a mathematics professor someday, which my father was and my sister now is. But instead, I got derailed as part of my undergraduate education. I took on a lark a course in computer music, and the computer music basically won, and I found myself spending all of my time in the computer music laboratories at MIT and not enough time doing mathematics. And so I ended up running off to Paris to become a computer music researcher at the institution called IRCAM, which is part of the Pompidou Center in Paris, and worked there for 8 years until finally a music department in the US decided to hire me back, despite the fact that I had no formal music education to speak of. And so I found myself as a mathematician working in a music department at the University of California, San Diego, which was just a wonderful opportunity for me. It gave me a space and a time that I could grow creatively and really work myself into being a functioning musician as well as being a mathematician and a software designer. Well, there are a lot of mathematics professors in the world, and mathematics is a very old field, and it's really very hard to do anything new in mathematics. Right? So the theorems that you learn in high school geometry have been theorems for more than 2,000 years, right? And I was thinking I was going to be a good enough mathematician that I would do something revolutionary in the field of mathematics. And by the time I was finally finishing my PhD, I had learned that all I could do was just add a little bit of an addendum onto a little bit of an addendum of someone else's theorem. At the same time as I was finishing my mathematics education, I was spending a lot of time working with Barry Vercoe at MIT in the experimental music studio there, which became the Media Lab at MIT. I was able to do things that no one had ever done before, almost immediately, because the field was very new. Things had not been tried. People hadn't had time yet on a computer that could make music to try things, to do things. And so just being in a wide open field, such as computer music was in the late 1970s, made it possible for me to create things that ended up being really quite novel and quite interesting to other people. Another thing that was very good was that I had access to people who did have music education. So there were composers from all over the Boston area who would come to MIT to be able to get on this one computer in the town of Boston that could make music. And so I met people from Harvard, from Brandeis, from Wellesley, from all the other schools around who had music educations. And I learned that, as I should have known, I was no kind of musician really, but I was able to do things that musicians could work with as a collaborator. And so I learned very early on that all of my work really should be collaborative. I work a lot with Kerry Hagan, who is simultaneously a composer, primarily a composer, but also has an education in electrical engineering. And so she is by far the better musician of the two of us. I'm by far the better mathematician, but we actually know enough now about each other's fields that we can communicate at a sort of undergraduate level on the commonalities between our two backgrounds. But we also are fully formed at a professional level in our own ways of working, which for me is computer music research now, which is largely a mathematical field. And for her, it's being a composer, composing music, composing pieces of contemporary music, and also increasingly working on interactive installations and performance art and other kinds of media as well. I think that the music department at the University of California, San Diego at that time was unique in the world in that they would hire scientists and engineers as part of their music faculty. So this was a music faculty that had really radical music figures working in it, such as Pauline Oliveros and, radicals, West Coast people who wouldn't be working in universities on the East Coast because the music they were making was too experimental and too crazy. And as a result, it was a perfectly natural thing, I think, for people at the University of California, San Diego, in that music department, to reach well outside of the accepted practice of making classical concert music, and to reach for what they saw as being something that was new. And In the last half of the last century, the new thing in music, I think, was electronics. The bringing electronic techniques and computer techniques to the practice of composing and performing music. That really is the main thing in my ears that's happened in music in the last half of a century. So it was visionary on their part to reach out and look for people who were doing cutting edge work in applying electronics and computer techniques to music. And they wanted that, and they saw that they were not going to need a person with a music degree to get them there. They were going to need people in other fields besides their own that they could work with in order to build that idea out. I've worked very closely with many people whom I first met as students at the University of California, San Diego. I still keep a close relationship with, I would say, about a half a dozen of them. Of all of them, I have spent the most time working with Kerry Hagan, primarily, I think, because the particular way that our expertises interlock is especially good for rapid and easy communication. She's obviously a very talented musician, but she can speak the language of electronics and of computer science in a way that I can give her an idea out of my field, and she can take it and work with it very, very quickly and fluently. And meanwhile, she can say something musically, and I can understand what she's talking about because of my music experience. So there's just enough overlap that the communication is very, very fast and easy. And yet there's enough difference in our working styles and in our backgrounds and abilities that the two of us can encompass much more possibility of technique and of practice than either of us could alone. So it's really an ideal collaboration. When Kerry Hagan came to the University of California, she didn't know anything much about electronic music. She had an engineering background, so she had the basic, the basic background that you would need to be able to learn these techniques. But she really was a student at that point. She was an empty vessel into which you could pour all kinds of nonsense. And the nonsense that we faculty poured into her included what I was able to tell her about electronic music and how to work with it. Then it was many years later that we really became collaborators. She went and became a professor in her own right, and then we started working together about 9 years ago. And over the last 9 years, the collaboration has worked so well that we have done more and more projects together in a deeper and closer way. Right. What was special about Kerry as a student? One thing is, it's not the case that one student is more special than another student. The thing that I see is that every student has a particular collection of things that they want to do and a particular collection of things that they can do, a particular kind of background. And the hard thing to find is always what opportunities are there out in the world that match, that fit with the specific things that the student wants to do and can do. In Kerry's case, it just happened that, among other things that she does, one thing that she was very well suited to do was to collaborate with me professionally after leaving school. Most students who leave the graduate program at UC San Diego go off and find collaborators who are not, in fact, the faculty that they met there, but they have met them perhaps as other students in the same time, or perhaps at conferences, or perhaps in completely different ways. So I can see some students who are off working with people whom I didn't even know the existence of before. Other students who actually have maintained close ties with faculty at University of California. Both of those things exist. The thing is, as a person who was once a student, and I remember not having any idea what I was going to do when I got out of school. It was like, oh, you're going to get your degree now, and then what, right? What are you going to do? Well, one answer is, yeah, whatever it is, it's going to be an accident. There's going to be a coincidence there. There's going to be some bit of luck that pops in. You don't know what it's going to be, but the thing that you find to do you're going to have found it in some way that is not going to be through the career office. It's going to be something else. And furthermore, if you're a student right now, you are going to be doing things in 15 years that we don't know about right now. So what we're training you for is not how to use a particular kind of technology that exists now, but hopefully we're getting you ready to understand new technologies that haven't emerged yet, so that when they do emerge, or as they're emerging, or as you're helping them emerge, you can be right there where things are changing fast and where things are growing. So for many years, I've been developing a software environment which I call Pure Data, which is an attempt, one of many attempts I've made, in fact, but the one that I have stayed with the longest, to make a very plastic, very open-ended kind of environment for making electronic arts, with an emphasis on real-time interactivity. So what you get when you download Pure Data, which by the way is open source, so you can download it for free, you get nothing. You get an empty blank page, exactly like someone gave you a piece of paper. And what you have to do then, as an artist or as a researcher, is put something together that was in your mind that Pure Data is allowing you to do. So in that way, Pure Data is something like a programming environment, but it's aimed at a specific set of people and also a specific set of problems. The people are artists of various kinds, not necessarily well trained in computer science, although that doesn't hurt, not necessarily very good at math, although that doesn't hurt either, but with some kind of artistic idea that they want to carry out, that an interactive computer system could be put into place to help them realize. And this could be an upcoming performance of music with electronics, sounds coming out of speakers. It might be an installation where people go into a gallery and interact with something. Or it might just be a purely network figment that realizes some kind of object over the network that you can interact with. So there's no particular medium that is attached to Pure Data except the medium of time, of the passage of time and the possibility of reactivity, of taking inputs, making decisions on the basis of them, and then making things happen as a function of that. Pure Data just gives you tools to put your own thing together. It doesn't put anything together for you. The thing that was on my mind when I started writing Pure Data was a concert date. So there was a concert, it was an international computer music conference in Thessaloniki, Greece in the year 1997. And I and a composer and a visual artist, Rand Steiger and Vibeke Sorensen, had decided to put together a live performance involving improvised music and improvised computer graphics in real time with a network component so that it could be simultaneously unrolling back at our homes in California with other artists and with us in Thessaloniki, Greece. This was a very ambitious project of which we carried out about half. We started working on this in 1996, and there was a concert date in September 1997. And so I wrote Pure Data with the idea that it would be ready for that concert, and that concert would be the first public showing of a thing using Pure Data. So Pure Data, in its development, in all of my work on it, and all of other people's work on it too, who've contributed to it since, has always been aimed at the realization of artistic projects. There's always been a date, there's always been a deadline. And so it's been growing incrementally over the years as we try to get it ready for the next for the next artistic challenge that it now needs to meet. Most recently, the news in Pure Data has been a greater emphasis on multi-channel audio of the sort that you do very well at Virginia Tech. So, for instance, here there's this thing called the Cube, which has over, I think, 124 channels of audio, right? And so one thing that Pure Data is better at doing this year than it was last year is in generating 124 channel sounds that you could play in a space like Virginia Tech's Cube. When I started writing Pure Data, I was working solely by myself, and other people were able to download the program or even download the source code to the program. And they started, especially people at one center in Graz, Austria, started making their own little additions to Pure Data. And as time went on, I started learning that some of them were actually better at doing certain aspects of things than I was. And so I started incorporating code that other people had written as part of Pure Data itself, and then started redistributing a new version of Pure Data, including their contributions. As time went on, this actually became a well understood and established practice. and things came out like, for instance, there's now a thing called GitHub. The collaborative aspect of Pure Data predates the existence of GitHub, but when GitHub came up, it was, yes, that's the platform we should be using for this stuff we've been doing. And now PD it lives on GitHub, right? So I'm sure this will be different in the future too. In other words, the style, the way in which people can contribute to Pure Data in the future is probably going to be different from what it is now, because those techniques continue to be refined over time. But yes, the collaborative aspect of Pure Data goes back at least to about 1999, 2 years after the beginning of Pure Data, when one of the people, Winfried Rich in Graz, Austria, got Pure Data running in Linux. I was running it on Silicon graphics machines and PCs, but Linux is the way to run Pure Data if you really want to have fun, it turns out. I've known about Virginia Tech since 1977. I haven't actually come to campus until sometime in the 2000s. I think the first time I was here was the Seamus conference in 2008. But all of these, I've been here 5 or 6 times now for various kinds of conferences and other visits, and they're all mixed up in my head. Virginia Tech is one of the 3 or 4 campuses in the United States that I really like most to visit because of the quality of the people here and the specific directions that they take, and also because of its combination of a very strong focus on undergraduate education, but the fact that they combine that with a cutting-edge artistic technology research center. That doesn't exist in very many places. There are places with wonderful undergraduate programs that have a small electronic music studio. There are places like MIT where there's this big fat research scene, but on the other hand, you don't really interact very much with the undergraduates as a researcher. This place, as I understand it and as I've come to know it, is a place where you will see very young people, like 18 to 22-year-old people, working in direct contact with the development of new technologies that are at a world-class level. This is really a special thing, and so I love coming here. I tell people to go here if they want to do certain kinds of things. And maybe some of them do, I don't know. This might be the 5th time I'm visiting Blacksburg, Virginia, with Kerry Hagan usually, and this particular time the reason we came was to put on a concert. We have had in mind the idea of developing a full-length concert program together for years now, and only now have we had the opportunity and the time really to put a program together of this sort. And of course we came to Virginia Tech as the first place we wanted to try to put this concert on, because we like the people here that we know, and second, because the facilities are exactly what we need in order to be able to put the piece on in the best possible way, with the level of support that we would need to get a first try. So things are going to go wrong the first time you do a concert. So we wanted a place where stuff could go wrong and there would be people like Tanner up the Grove who could figure out what was going on and fix it real fast. So this was kind of the ideal place for us to make a premiere of this concert program that now that we have played, we are hoping now to take other places. Almost all the work that I do is collaborative, and it's very rare that I collaborate with someone who has the same kind of background that I have. First off, my background is a little bit rare because there are not very many mathematicians working exclusively in electronic arts, although there are a few. But on the other hand, if I found someone who had the same kind of background as me, I don't know if I'd really want to collaborate with them, because the purpose of collaboration at some level would be to collaborate with someone who has some different skill set or some different set of ideas than what I would have. And this takes many, many different forms. So I've collaborated with visual artists, with various composers, and with even with researchers in various ways, to try to realize things in different kinds of ways. So right now the people I'm able to think of are mostly music composers, but I must have collaborated in a large or a small way with more than 100 people over the 40 years of my career, starting at MIT. So every collaboration is different because every person I work with is different. Um, and some of them, such as Kerry, are people that I have gone back to and collaborated with many times over the years. Other examples of that would be Rand Steiger, composer, Philippe Manoury, a French composer whom I work with a lot. Other collaborations have lasted, have reached one project, and then maybe we'll collaborate again, maybe we won't, we don't know yet. Well, one thing I've learned about giving advice to students is that they won't listen. And so I can tell them pretty much whatever I want to tell them, and it's going to have about the same effect. I do tell students that they are going into a world that's very different from the world that I came into when I was their age. What would that be, 40 years ago? And the best I can do is tell them that I simply don't know what they're going to face when they're in the middle of their careers. And so how on earth can they get ready for that, right? The best answer I have to that is to study disciplines at a very formal level, I think is the right word. In other words, study mathematics, study computer science, study physics, study literature, study the arts. These things, with the exception of computer science, these fields have been around for a long, long time. And even in the case of computer science, it's been around for 50 years, let's say. So it's decently established. Mathematics has been around for 4,000 or 5,000 years. That's not going to go away, and so that can be your friend for your entire career. The same thing with musical training. Almost no matter what tradition of music you study, whether it's Western classical music or popular musics or experimental musics or other musics of the world, of which there are many, just the ability to find yourself in the world of music is something that will stay with you. And as musical ideas emerge and as musical styles change, you'll still have that background and that ability to use that background to do whatever you find that needs or wants doing in the middle of your own careers. So I tell students, don't bother learning the newest thing, the AI or the this or the that. Learn the fundamentals, because the fundamentals are the things that will actually stay with you and stay useful. But also develop a flexibility of mind, a technique of thinking or techniques of working habits and working approaches that will stay with you, because those things don't change so much. And then the specifics of what's going on 15 years from now, we just have no idea what that's going to look like. No one knew when I was a kid that telephones would be computers. Right? Everyone now has a computer in their pocket. That was, we sort of knew that computers were getting miniaturized and that there was going to be some kind of very available computing equipment. No one had any idea that it was going to be our telephones. And certainly no one knew that that computers would all have cameras, right? And so something is going to be the case 15 years from now that no one today could possibly have imagined, or someone would have imagined, but everyone else would have laughed. And anyway, a lot of other people would have imagined a lot of other things that won't happen. So we don't know. And so how do you get ready for that? I think it's have a good working style, have knowledge of the fundamentals of things, the things that will actually stay. But again, that's advice, and no one's going to listen to it. So yeah, I'll offer it anyway.
Yeah.